Sounds weird to say, but Gao Peng and his pets are battling some rocks. Luckily, his pets are way too strong to lose to some nobody rocks. Hence, within the next few moments, he's beaten them all. One of them, the Holy Lake Spirit, reverts to the form of a little blue teacup. That has to be embarrassing. Gao Peng is surprised by the system window above the cup saying that this monster can be fused. Right as he's pondering the meaning of this, he notices another of the monsters trying to run. As it takes to the sky, it flashes him with an illusion and stuns Gao, but Stripey hits it with Disaster Cloud before it can get away. Falling to the ground, the rock known as the Goddess Stone is now ash black and smells of smoke. In its remains, Gao Peng finds yet another system notification saying that this monster can be fused. What is this? A fusion monster bargain sale? Another monster tries to escape underground with its Earth attribute. Unfortunately for it, Stripey is an Earth type 2, and a far superior one at that. Mere moments later, the monsters are trapped and bound in crystal-like projections. Stripey summoned from the ground. By the time Gao Peng is done in the area, he snagged 2 whole concentration stones, though one of them is noticeably smaller than the other. And that's not even to mention the 3 fusion monsters. He's basically kidnapped. With all his goals met and more, Gao Peng departs from the Wu Gorge to head home atop Stripey. On their way home via a highway along Wu Gorge River, one of the concentration stones begins behaving strangely. All of a sudden, Gao Peng is blindsided by a couple of kids flying out of nowhere with oranges for hats. According to the system, these are orange tree monsters at Commander Tier. As they call him Master and offer oranges, Gao Peng realizes they must be the result of the orange trees that were planted on Stripey's head. Unfortunately, one of the concentration stones was used up to evolve them into this humanoid form. Deciding to roll with it, Gao Peng names the kids Nunju and Beizi and tells them to introduce themselves as orange-delivering children in public. Ah yes, because that totally explains their presence with him. Yep, totally. Further along on their way home, Gao Peng gets to have an impromptu reunion with Chun Han Chiyao, an old friend from high school. After asking his Uncle Lee to give in a little bit, Chun comes to chat with Gao Peng. After buttering the crap out of Gao and catching up on what they've been up to since school, Nunju suddenly offers Chun an orange. Gao Peng just tells him to go along with it, causing Chun to laugh at how he's the same guy as ever. Towards the end of their talk, Chun reveals that he's on his way to the Golden Buddhist Mountain for an extermination job involving mutated monsters. According to rumors from the Explorers Union, there's a rare mutant monster that's highly aggressive towards humans. As the old friends each get back on their way, Gao Peng thinks about the Union and wonders if Chun will be okay. Later, the boy Wonder and his wonders are back at the lab beside the lake villa, while the orange kids thoroughly harass Gao's lab tech. He gets Da Zi ready for his evolution. Though Gao keeps trying to warn him of the irreversibility of the act, Da Zi just impatiently tells him to get on with it. Me when an anime hits me with a 30-episode filler arc out of nowhere. Once it's clear, Da Zi doesn't care about any of that and just wants to get stronger. Gao prepares to stick a giant canister of a needle straight into the centipede's butt. Da Zi, however, is as impatient as ever and grabs the syringe, saying that he'll just drink it. Wrong kind of shot, little guy. Pretty much instantly, a highly volatile reaction starts taking place and Gao Peng realizes he has to evacuate the library. He skedaddles the heck out of there with his assistant in tow, and the two end up outside at the lake, right as she asks what's going on. The entire lab erupts behind her in a pillar of purple energy and light, freaking her all the way out. When she stutters out that the lab just exploded, Gao Peng just tells her it's fine since he wanted to move to a new lab anyways. Imagine being that rich? Couldn't be me. Quietly, Gao Peng observes the after effects of Da Zi's evolution and concludes that it must be a success with that much of an energy expulsion. At his mental command, Da Zi transforms and the rubble from the explosion starts flying away. Somebody even smacks poor Stripey. As Da Zi fully changes form, yet another pillar of pure power explodes up from the now ruined laboratory. In the distance, Grandpa G's white dragon senses the presence of another dragon. Sure enough, what emerges from the ruins is Da Zi in the form of a dark golden centipede dragon. As he reads through the virtual essay that is now Da Zi's skill list, Gao Peng deadpans at one of them sounding suspiciously like an insulting pun. Don't ask what, it doesn't translate to English too well. Everything else is an afterthought to the little man himself though, whose main concern is why in the hell he only has 4 claws now. Gao Peng just tells him that's normal since he's not a pure centipede anymore. You know, like he warned you about beforehand. Anywho, with this task taken care of, Gao Peng can now turn his focus to the 3 fusion monsters he's got locked up in the dungeon. Fusing them will definitely require materials, but it might not be too hard since they seem friendly towards each other. Suddenly, Gao Peng receives a video call from his old friend, Chun Hun Chiao. The man's bloodied and beaten up visage yells in despair and asks for Gao Peng's help. The last thing he's able to tell Gao is that he's at the Golden Buddhist Mountains sunrise draw right now. Gao Peng narrows his eyes in frustration and thinks about how he knew something could go wrong. Seconds later, Gao Peng is aboard Da Zi and heading to Chun's location without wasting a moment. Once he gets there, he spots survivors from up in the air, only to realize they're not quite what he thinks. The system displays them as a decomposing deer pack, turned into these disgusting creatures due to pollution. Gao Peng notes that they may look scary, but not a single one of them is even Commander Tier. They can't be the ones who took down Chun's party, since those guys had 7 Commander Tiers. Right as he asks Da Zi to bring them closer, a hand bursts out of the greenery to their side and tries to grab the centipede dragon. In response, the newly evolved monster pulls a Pikachu and blasts the hand with a crap ton of electricity. Gao Peng looks down towards the direction the hand came from and spots a bunch of masked men with the strange monster. He wonders if these are the ones who attack the elders of the other regions. More importantly, the monster with them is a Lord Tier Level 49 Infernal Incinerator. As if that wasn't bad enough, right above them is a Lord Tier Level 47 Three-Eyed Crow General. And on top of that, there's a Lord Tier Level 46 Giant Radioactive Spider on the ground below them. You'd think that'd be enough, right? Nope, there's another. A Lord Tier Level 48 Phytophagus Symbiotic Moss. Gao Peng can instantly tell that a lot of effort has been put into preparing these monsters to besiege him. Then, the Three-Eyed Crow General blasts Gao Peng and his familiars with a curse that causes him a minor headache. Luckily, his link causes the damage to go straight to Streppy, who tanks it. With that, Gao Peng is completely fine and free to react now. His familiars are no exception either. Frosty's barely weakened by 1%, Slicey by 5, and Da Zi by 3. Cue sarcastic applause. Down below, the hooded idiots have no clue that the curse has been completely negged, and they have their monsters unleash an all-out attack as one. Unfortunately for them, the multi-pronged surprise attack is completely worthless when Da Zi activates Lightning World Purgatory. With this, both the attack and their spirits are crushed since that was their strongest attack. As Da Zi extends to his full vertical height and stares down at them with contempt, the lead rogue can only ask what the hell this monster is. As one of the rogues shields them with some sort of power, he comments that even Terra no Masakato's familiars don't pack that much firepower. Hoot now! Up above them, Gao Peng takes note of the shielded idiots and asks them if they're from Mihan and if there are more of them. If not, they all die here. Instantly, the lead rogue scoffs and calls him an arrogant brat. Bro, he just bodied your strongest dudes. What are you on? The idiot rogue goes on to order his incinerator to kill Da Zi and Gao Peng. My brother in Christ, you literally tried that already. Gao Peng just casually turns to good old Slicey and tells him to wipe them all out. The bug boy obeys and leaps down to the ground before cutting through several robes in a single swift movement. The idiot rogue tells his comrades that that's an assassin-type familiar and they have to retreat. Unfortunately for them, Gao Peng's done playing games and gets off Da Zi's back so he can go all out. With them no longer in the way, Da Zi is free to follow Gao Peng's orders to give their enemies a quick death. That right there is colder than Frosty's blasts. Da Zi instantly pierces the Crow General with one of his claws when it gets in range. He then tanks an attack from the incinerator before swatting away with his tail. Finally, the giant crab shows up and for some reason it can fly. The incinerator gets on top of it and the two monsters dash at Da Zi together, power of friendship style. Unfortunately for them, that's a completely brain-dead tactic allowing Da Zi to impale the crab thanks to its limited movement. The incinerator leaps upwards and actually gets a hit on Da Zi when it comes down, but that just pisses off the centipede dragon. With fury in his eyes and heart, Da Zi uses one of his new skills to light the incinerator's own heart ablaze. In a massive explosion, the monster is wiped out, nothing but a single hand surviving the boom. Down below, Gao Peng practically preems with pride at his familiar's capabilities. As Slicey reports the status of the fallen monsters, Gao Peng tells him to go catch the two robes who escaped. Afterwards, Gao Peng moves to speak to Chun Hun Chiao, who now has a sling around his injured arm. The man tries to apologize to Gao, but he's quick to reassure Hun Chiao. After all, those dudes were after him in the first place and Hun Chiao just got caught in the middle. Gao should apologize if anything. Just then, Hun Chiao's dad shows up and clasps his son's shoulder, while talking about how this is just a minor setback. which they have to get back up from like any other challenge. Putting on a more serious face, the older man sincerely thanks Gao Peng for saving them and reassures him that none of this is his fault. If anything, they should have been strong enough to protect their familiars, so it's on them. After hearing him speak passionately about survival of the fittest and his drive, Gao Peng can only admire the older Chun's tenacity. Just then, a little worm-like creature erupts from the ground near them and surprises Chun. Apparently, this is a familiar he forced into a contract years ago, so he had fully expected it to run away and hate him instead of coming back. Having seen enough, Gao Peng asks Chun what his future plans are and if he'd be willing to join the Southern Sky Group. Though the offer is generous, Chun is wary and warns Gao that they've lost everything already. Their monster hunting party is basically finished. Hell, he even canceled his blood contract with this little worm so it wouldn't get taken down for being his familiar earlier. Gao Peng just smiles at him and tells him a person's character is worth more than anything. And with the worm coming back to him, it's clear he has a good heart. With some encouragement from said worm, Chun locks eyes with Gao Peng with resolve and tells him they'll be happy to work for the Southern Sky Group. As for their next move from here, they'll be heading home and preparing to get revenge for what's happened today. Ominous. I love it. Back home, Gao Peng calls for Brainy to come out of the lake, only to find that it now has an army of aquatic minions. Or children. What the hell, man? Gao Peng decides to just ignore that for his own sanity and points at a couple of captured robes. He asks Brainy if he can extract their memories to find out who was behind the attack. The living brain tells him that the process leaves the victim's brain dead, but Gao Peng just tells him not to even worry about that. With the go-ahead granted, the tentacle monster all but leaps at its two newest victims. After thoroughly mind-screwing the two captives, Brainy tells Gao Peng what he's learned, which isn't much in terms of useful info. The two are originally from the Yangli region, but after infiltrating the Nihon region, they were dispatched by the Nihon region to assassinate Gao Peng. Their last orders were to disguise themselves as a nameless organization's agents. Gao Peng is highly confused by who their true master is and finds that Brainy has no concrete info on that. Behind him, Flamey asks Gao Peng why he's hesitating. If these guys are enemies, they just need to get rid of them. Pretty primitive, but he's not wrong though. Gao Peng agrees with Flamey and decides he just needs an excuse now rather than a concrete reason. Over in the Black Fog world, Dumby has subjugated hundreds if not thousands of undead. He calls forth his three strongest minions, the Broken Jade Devil Spirit, Six-Tailed Heavenly Fox Skeleton, and Stone Mountain Elephant Skeleton. Apart from these three, Dumby dispels all of his other minions and absorbs the accumulated energy from their time in his army. With a sudden burst of flame in his eyes, Dumby's power rises higher than ever and he puts on a horrifying grin. It's time to go home to his master. Back with Gao and the others, his pets suddenly sense a familiar presence. Half a second later, a spatial rift opens right in front of them and Dumby emerges from it before kneeling before Gao Peng. He is now at level 59. Cool, the Goku number. Dumby's telling his master about how he's gotten much stronger when Gao Peng gives him a shoulder hug and tells him that's great. Now that he's back, it's time for them to go overseas for a bit. According to Gao, there's a rumor that a night parade of 100 demons appeared in the Nihon region after the cataclysm, so they'll go there. As the two move away from the lake, the other familiars bicker in the background about how Goldie's a brainless buffoon. Well, not really, but he is that though. Over in the Nihon region later that day, Gao Peng lands on a beach and finds some men picking what seem to be shells from the sand. When he questions them about it, they tell him that they're harvesting what are known as white meat conchas. According to them, they scrape the meat off their bodies when it becomes visible and then use it for sashimi. Curious and more than a little suspicious about this claim, Gao Peng checks out the status window for these conchas. According to the system, their blood and flesh holds a number of addictive toxins that alter brain chemistry, something that even eventually causes paralysis. With his suspicions about the conchas being something more sinister confirmed, Gao Peng tries to warn the men to eat less of it. Unfortunately, they're already so addicted that there's no saving them or the other people that consume it. When they try to offer some to him, he just tells them to keep their catch and tell him where exactly he is. The man answers that this is Tiesing Island, telling Gao Peng that he's still quite far from the capital. He recalls that Terano Masakado from the capital spoke against him being a referee last time they had an encounter. Now it's finally time to get some payback on the old coot. Over in the capital, a shroud of darkness has suddenly enveloped one of the many skyscrapers. Inside his chambers, the old man himself is warned by one of his familiars that a strong presence is incoming from the west. The man moves to the window and sees a swarm of flying undead coming their way. He tells his familiar, Haisha, to go deal with them. The shadowy beast heads outside to do just that, but first it tells the civilians in the area to run away. With them gone, it takes on a humanoid form and flies into the swarm. Masakado isn't allowed to relax just yet though, as he receives a video call from an underling who informs him there's a new spatial rift at Shikoku. The almighty cherry tree there is being attacked by a mysterious monster trainer that came through said rift. Masakado is still in shock from this news when Gao Peng and Flamey come onto the scene outside. Despite Dumby's undead army having trouble with the shadowy Haisha, Frosty steps up to Flamey's head and lets loose a massive ice storm. It's not quite entirely effective at first, but the second Frosty really puts his back into it, it's over. Haisha is encased in a massive block of ice, Avatar style, and falls to the ground. From his spot on a nearby roof, Masakado and his men are stunned by how fast that ended. Suddenly, Gao Peng's attention is diverted to a massive explosion of energy from off in the distance. Next to him, Frosty informs him that a very powerful familiar has just died and not very far from them at that. Gao Peng instantly deduces that it must be the Nihon region's guardian, the Cherry Sky Tree. He's highly concerned by this as the tree is a level 54 monster of more than epic grade with extreme regenerative abilities. Who in the world could have killed it? He decides to put that aside for now and focus on the task at hand. He flies down to the roof Masakado is standing on and speaks to him in the native Nihon language. He tells the old man that he's here due to an assassination attempt on him from people of the Japanese region. He has a video recording of their interrogation and he'd like to clear things up so there's no ill will between their regions. As he's doing this, he studies the system window of the giant chicken thing next to Masakado, a level 47 beast known as Guy along with poison abilities. To Gao's surprise, the old man answers him in the native language of the Kuashia region, telling him that he studied there once. Masakado tells Gao that he's willing to speak openly and overlook how badly his familiar has been injured just now. Before that though, he wants to show Gao Peng something. He pulls out a black box and plays a hologram recording of a scene of utter destruction. This is footage they just received from their drone stationed at the Cherry Sky Tree's location. The last thing recorded was the face of a strange man alongside a group of similar men and giant, unheard of monsters. Immediately after that, one of the monsters noticed the drone and destroyed it. According to Masakado, they've run the man's face through every recognition software that got only to turn up 0 matches. And with their equipment being the best of the best, there's no explanation for that, at least not for them. Gao Peng has a theory of his own though. When he went to the North Pole and met Bei Qingyan, he was able to work out more or less what her situation is. There was once a civilization of monsters and trainers on Earth many years ago. They, however, left the world long before the cataclysm. These people plan to return to Earth once it became inhabitable for them once more. It seems these new people are part of that civilization and they've got less than friendly intentions. Masakado tells Gao Peng that their forces can't stand up to these people and they would like his assistance for the sake of both their regions. Gao agrees to help under 2 conditions. Firstly, he'll only speak to them through real-time broadcast, not any kind of face-to-face meeting. Secondly, if the enemy proves too strong, he's getting the hell out of this region at once. Yeah, sounds smart to be honest. Hell had already be gone. Masakado assures him that won't be a problem and turns to take action. From behind him, Gao Peng suggests someone over ASAP and to send someone strong since these people clearly aren't peaceful. Masakado agrees and decides to go with the nuclear option. He himself will go meet them. Damn Graham's alright, go get them. Over the edge of a major city, the green-haired individuals from the drone footage can be seen watching the city and speaking about it. Their leader, Tong Mo, clearly believes the people of Earth to be inferior to them. The ancient trainers, the man whose face was in the footage, Tong Ying, suddenly speaks up about someone coming their way. Acting as arrogant as he looks, Tong Mo tells Ying to test the incoming person's strength with his black lightning eagle. Up in the skies, Masakado speaks to Gao Peng through an earpiece and tells him that he's arrived at the scheduled location. On the footage from his camera, Gao Peng can clearly see the events of the next few seconds. Right as Masakado is thanking Gao Peng for agreeing to help, a black eagle comes soaring his way. Masakado believes it's an attempt to make contact so he's unprepared when a moment later, the eagle is right on top of him and unleashes a massive lightning blast that destroys the camera. Inside the control room, Masakado's men are in a panicked frenzy while Gao Peng silently declares that Terra no Masakado has lost his life. For that to happen so fast, the enemy's familiars are no doubt King Tyr at the very least. The others quickly re-establish a feed on the enemies and call out that they're heading towards Higashida-based city. On the screen, Gao Peng is able to study their familiars and finds that not a single one of them is less than a peak game tier. He's lucky none of them are legendaries or he have no option but to pack it in and run. Right now, with both sides having familiars of more or less the same level, things will come down to the grades of the familiars instead. Still outside Higashida, the Tongs are arguing about what their next move should be. The girl named Ling believes they should head back now since the city's population alone is more than their entire tribe. In a place like that, there's bound to be strong trainers that'll give them trouble. The chubby dude named Tong Xiang is of the same mind and believes they should leave since they've already completed their mission by scouting the area out. On the other hand, the Dr. Stone cosplayer Tong Mo insists that he wants someone strong to challenge him. To that end, he has his familiar let loose its power to draw out all the strong trainers from the city. After all, his one-eyed giant demon is the strongest familiar this planet has ever seen. Oh boy, who's gonna break it to this heavily diluted idiot? Internally, the idiot starts monologuing about how he'll prove to Ling how powerful he is. Oh boy, he's a simp too. Or is this insult territory? 10 minutes later, the Tongs are confused by the lack of reaction from literally anyone in the whole city. Tong Mo is just about to say that there must not be any trainers in the city when Ying calls out that someone's coming. Up in the sky above them, Gao Peng is seated inside a military helicopter piloted by one of Masakato's men. As soon as they're in range, Tong Yang's lightning eagle dashes their way ready to attack. Gao Peng just scoffs at their barbaric actions and prompts Frosty to step in. A second later, the entire helicopter is coated in a solid casing of ice, causing the eagle to crash into it and back off. Gao Peng is pleased to learn that these ancient trainers don't seem to have any concept of modern technology. Makes sense. The ice chick didn't even know what canned food was. Sure enough, Tong Mo was astounded by what he believes to be an ice metal dual attribute beast up in the sky. He decides it doesn't matter though and orders his one-eyed demon to shoot an attack at the enemy. Sure enough, the Cyclops fires a pretty strong beam straight at the helicopter and it does as intended. The vehicle is wrecked and going into a free fall. Gao Peng tells the pilot to eject and not worry about him, thus saving his life. Meanwhile, he himself levitates down via ice platforms created by Frosty in an incredibly majestic display. This doubles down as a quick attack that freezes Tong Mo's demon in a massive iceberg. Tong Xiang commands his own familiar, a six-tusked Brahmin elephant, to use its psychic powers to wake up the demon. Meanwhile, Tong Yang sends his eagle to attack Gao Peng and his familiar while they're still in the air, as he believes they'll be handicapped up there. Unfortunately for the green-haired dunce squad, Gao Peng is just that guy. As soon as the eagle's in range, he summons Dumby and has him take over. On the ground, the Tongs are stunned by Gao Peng having two familiars. From what they know, only a holy individual is capable of having more than even one familiar. Oh wow, they're in for a rude awakening once they see the rest of the squad. Up on the mid-air battlefield, Dumby uses his skill, Heart of the Yin Soul Dominator. With this, Tong Yang's eagle is crushed and collapses to the earth, while the trainer himself does the same with blood spilling from his mouth. The man calls out to Tong Xiang and tells him to run now while he still can. Taking the advice, Tubby calls out to Tong Ling and prepares to get them the hell out of there atop his elephant. Unfortunately, Dumby is on top of them half a moment later and ready to take them all the way down. Panicking, Tong Xiang commands his elephant to drive the enemy back and then run without engaging it. How the hell does that work? He either drives him back or he doesn't engage him. Unfortunately for Tong Xiang and his elephant, Dumby's on a whole other level. He grabs the elephant with just one hand and sucks the soul right out of it. I should call her. Anyways, with the elephant out of commission just like that, Dumby makes quick work of Tong Xiang and his comrades as well, standing over their fallen bodies. Gao Peng tells Dumby to tie them up before he wakes them back up. He wants to get to the bottom of what the hell's going on here. Frosty then brings his attention to Tong Mo and his demon who are still encased in the ice. Gao Peng comments that they don't really need any more hostages and casually tells Frosty to shatter them. They'll be surprised by the cruel answer. Frosty does as asked and kills them both with a snap of his fingers. Later, the remaining Tongs awaken and Tubby takes command of his team. He tries to speak to Gao Peng, constantly saying stuff that sounds pleading, but he can't understand a word. Luckily, Frosty is knowledgeable enough to play the role of translator. Gao Peng learns that these guys are from the Song Tong tribe and are the children of the high priest and the vice captain of their hunting squad. As if that wasn't already bad enough. It turns out the guy he just ordered to be killed was the son of their patriarch. Oh balls, that can't be good. Gao Peng instantly realizes how bad this situation is and starts analyzing what his next move should be. With each consecutive sentence, Gao Peng's thoughts become darker and darker till he decides that his only option is to kill these guys as well and delay the retaliation from their tribe. At his command, Dumby steps forward, intimidating them all. Tong Ying faces him without fear, telling him the men of the Tong tribe do not fear their end. Gao barely reacts and tells Dumby to go ahead and fulfill his wishes then. Right as he's beginning to suck the soul out of Ying, Frosty chucks an ice chip at Gao Peng's face, causing him to stop. He tells the trainer that his emotions are out of whack. When Gao expresses his confusion, Dumby turns around to explain. Because of the negative feedback from all the souls he resurrected and absorbed back in the fog world, a large chunk of negative emotions were absorbed too. He was able to filter them out for the most part, but when he came back and transferred Gao Peng's share of power to him, he was loaded with all the negativity all at once. Frosty assures him it'll fade after a while, but for now, he needs to keep a tight leash on himself. Gao Peng quickly recomposes himself and tells Xian that everything he just did was a prank and he's willing to return them to their tribe. All they have to do is make sure the elders provide him with one of a list of materials. Said list includes True Dragon Fruit, Great Destruction Origin Stone, Light of 0 Degree, Body of the War God, and Flame of the Sky. Tong Xiang's response is simultaneously the most relatable and silly one possible in such a situation. Huh, I can't blame him. Who the hell calls a threat of death a prank? A little bit later, the group head back to the site of the Cherry Sky Tree with the Tong hostages in tow. Though the tree isn't a combat monster, Gao Peng considers the possible benefits of it being able to neutralize his negative emotions. With his mind made up, he lands in front of it and asks Dumby to resurrect the tree. Behind him, Tong Xiang continues to be amazed by the abilities at Gao Peng's disposal and prays that the tribe elders don't try to pick a fight with him. Unfortunately for Gao Peng, the tree revives in a mutated state that does the exact opposite of what he was hoping for. The thing's a hell tree now and has a violent aura that it can use as an aura monster. On the bright side, that should buff Dumby's undead army pretty well at least. Hell, it might even be useful for debuffing enemies. A full month later, Gao Peng stands before his familiars in his lab attire. Thanks to his trip to the west, Flamey has finally evolved into a legendary grade level 49 beast known as a Subblood Baifang. What's even more of a drastic change, however, is the evolution that Slicey has undergone. Gone is the bright white coat it once had. He is now a level 50 epic grade beast known as a black armored blood-bladed beast, or as I like to call them, Darth Bug. Gao watches as Slicey suddenly rushes towards the trees and comments that he'll have to praise him later for being so eager to train. Unfortunately, it turns out he was just measuring his height, so yeah. All that happens beyond that is a little sibling squabble between Slicey and Da Zi. Gao deciding his treasure-sniffing mouse doesn't really need much beyond survival skills and some wholesome rodent snoring. With everything else more or less taken care of at the moment, Gao Peng decides it's finally time to pay a visit to those fusion monsters he's had locked up this whole time. Soon, Gao Peng arrives at the back of the mountain at the entrance of a confinement room made specially by Stripey. He opens up the door with a cheerful attitude, expecting the three monsters to still be bound. Instead, he very nearly gets a face full of concrete fist before Da Zi tackles him out of the way. On the other side of the mountain, even Goldie and the others hear the deafening impact and tremors from the fist. Back with Gao Peng, he shakily stares at the wall behind him, which is now a pile of rubble thanks to the punch he just barely avoided. The creature that emerges from the confinement chamber isn't anywhere close to what he expected either. The monsters have fused on their own and are now a legendary grade King Tier level 56 dragon-slaying goddess. Yes, I know it's a mouthful. Most titles in this series are. Gao Peng is blown away by the monster's physique and pure power, as well as the dragon-slaying water chapter on its left arm. That must be the main fusion core of this monster. Da Zi steps in front of Gao Peng to defend his master and dashes forward, not realizing that Gao Peng is calling for him to stop. Because of this, Da Zi is fully defenseless against the goddess's use of anti-dragon sealing. Using the chapter on its arm, the goddess seals away Da Zi's power completely. Gao Peng notes that this is because of the Dragon Slayer mark and any dragon-type monster will be at a severe disadvantage against it. Luckily, the others show up before things can escalate further. Flamey and Goldie double-team the goddess with a roar attack and a kick respectively. To Goldie's shock though, his attack doesn't leave so much as a scratch on the goddess. Then, it moves to punch him with a level of speed Goldie is unable to react to in time. Gao Peng observes and realizes that though he's got a sufficient grade, Goldie's level is too far below the goddess to challenge her. Much to his relief though, Dumby shows up just in time to save the buff duck and clashes fists with the goddess. Gao Peng tells Goldie to back down and let Dumby handle this, making the duck worry about the big guy. Gao Peng assures him that Flamey's there for support too, so it'll be fine. Right as he says that, Flamey lets loose a torrent of green flames at the goddess, only for those two to do absolutely nothing. Seeing that the flames don't do enough damage for a knockout gives Goldie an idea. He yells at Flamey to hit him with a burst of those flames so he can stack up his passive. Flamey's more than ready to do that since he just mispronounced the bird's name and lets loose a whole geyser of fire at the duck. While that goose is getting cooked, Dumby and the goddess are in the midst of what I can only describe as one JoJo ass fight. And to be fair, Dumby's doing quite well in terms of doing damage. The goddess, however, decides to be cheap and creates a boatload of illusory clones to confuse him. Before that strategy can pay off though, Gao Peng's largest familiar quite literally steps in and sits down on the goddess. That's one way to settle things down, I guess. Now that Streppy has handled the situation for them, Gao Peng decides it's the perfect time to test out the Hell Tree's abilities. With the aura it provides and the stacking of his passive, Goldie instantly grows into a giant and gains a sinister purple aura. Dude's a legitimate ultra ego user. Goldie steps forward and tells Streppy to let the goddess go so they can have a fair one-on-one fight. What follows from there, though, is anything but fair. Goldie completely tanks the goddess's hit and proceeds to toss the statue face first into a wall. Just like that, the whole thing is over. With the battle over, Frosty quickly freezes the goddess in a chunk of ice and Streppy stomps on it with one of his building-sized legs. Completely defeated and now crushed into pieces, the goddess separates into the three monsters it originally formed from. Two of them are in heavily injured states while one is just outright dead. Gao Peng speaks to them and tells them this is on them for deciding to fuse and cause trouble even after he gave them a safe place to recover for a whole month. I mean, recovering from the beatdown Gao gave them in the first place, but yeah, fair enough. That aside though, Gao Peng can't help but be amazed by the dragon's slaying chapter's ability. With how thoroughly it debuffed the Da Zi, it's no simple suppression ability. The thing possesses something more like a whole domain that weakens entire groups of enemies. And at higher levels, it can even ban the use of elemental powers altogether. Since Ji and Gao have three dragon-type familiars between them, Gao Peng ponders destroying this monster if he can't tame it himself. Meanwhile, Wu Gorge Base City is under siege from an extremely sinister being. Dozens upon dozens of corpses are strewn across the beach, completely drained of their vitality. The being responsible for this is none other than a hold-up. What the hell is that hair? Am I looking at an emo dragon right now? Despite its ridiculous appearance, this monster is powerful enough to drive the whole city to the furthest extent of absolute chaos. Back at his own home, Gao Peng receives a sudden distress call asking for assistance over at Wu Gorge City. All they tell him is that there's been a massive flood caused by what appears to be a black dragon. Thousands of lives are on the line every second that he's not there. Gao Peng tells them he'll be there soon and instantly flies off in the direction of Wu Gorge City. Once they get there, Gao Peng is treated to the sight of dead bodies floating in the river. Up ahead, the legendary grade level 59 black flood dragon responsible for it all is feasting on some new victims. Gao Peng laments his failure to tame the dragon's slaying chapter since it would have been perfect here. In the time he does this, the dragon heals what little injuries it's taken so far by consuming human souls. Gao Peng sees this and hurriedly orders Dumby to go stop it. The undead king dashes forward and does just that, clashing with the dragon in the air. As the two monsters start going back and forth, Frosty warns Gao Peng that Dumby may not be able to win here. As such, he's going to go help. Before he goes, Gao Peng asks him to be careful since its attacks can harm his soul. When Frosty takes to the air on a platform of ice, the dragon spots him and shoots off a beam of energy. Frosty ducks under it just in time and counters with an ice blast of his own, blowing the dragon back. With one side of its face frozen solid, the dragon rises upwards in a rage and prepares to change the whole terrain. Luckily, Frosty is able to freeze the water around them before the dragon can use it. Back on board Da Zi, Gao Peng tries to think of a strategy. With Dumby being unsuited to single combat and all of his other pets at a much lower level than the dragon, Gao isn't sure what to do here. All of his pets have some kind of disadvantage or the other to this thing. Gao Peng has never been a pinch quite like this before. Meanwhile, the dragon has grown sick of the constant attacks from its two opponents. As such, the second it realizes that Gao Peng is their master and he's open, the dragon launches itself at the human with its jaw wide open. Right before it can reach him, Frosty comes flying into the way and slashes the dragon as hard as he can with his ice claws. Thanks for Frosty. Gao Peng is saved and the dragon's attention is diverted just long enough for the next two familiars to jump in, namely Dazi and Goldie, who have been preparing something of their own. At Gao Peng's signal, Goldie activates the forbidden domain, causing them to be completely protected from the dragon's next attack. To the side, Frosty comments that it's a good thing Goldie was close to Gao Peng. However, he suddenly senses something to the side. Out of a cloud of steam and smoke, the black dragon suddenly slithers out at max speed and slashes Frosty across the body with the full force of its claws. Despite being its true target, Frosty is able to stay lucid enough to chomp down on the dragon's hide, determined to do just as much damage. This only makes the dragon more smug as it's now able to chomp down on Frosty in turn and dig his teeth deep into the lion's body. Ayo, pause. This better not be a euphemism of some sort. What the dragon doesn't realize is that Frosty is gearing up to use his ultimate move. Gao Peng realizes this and calls out to his familiars that Frosty wants to use Eternal Frost Field, the very skill that caused him to go into hibernation back in the fog world. Unwilling to let a member of their little family sacrifice themselves, Dumby calls out to Frosty not to do it. Gathering his power, Dumby launches a full-force spiritual attack on the black dragon. Gao Peng notes that even monsters at the peak of Lord Tier would be knocked out by that. And yet, the dragon is not only keeping up the pressure on Frosty's body, it's even biting down harder. Since the spiritual attack didn't work, Dumby moves on to his next resort. He snaps one of his ribs straight out of the cage, imbues it with his energy, and holds it up like an almighty spear. Then, he hoists it over his shoulder and launches the impromptu weapon with so much force that it completely embeds itself into the dragon's body and blows it off of Frosty. Gao Peng is quick to go and catch the little furry lion out of the air as he reverts to his miniature form. Meanwhile, the black dragon manages to escape, shocked from Dumby's final attack. Gao Peng examines Frosty's injury and sees that it's quite serious. Using his ultimate skill may have stopped the dragon and even kept it from escaping, but he just can't bear the idea of losing Frosty like that. The bad news is just beginning though. Because of the extreme effects of their battle just now, Wu Gorge City is completely destroyed. All that's left is a flooded crater with the floating remains of some buildings. The only good news is that Stripey has finally arrived with Brainy and the others. With Flowery on the scene, they can get right to healing Frosty back up to full health. While the flower works on that, Dumby tells Gao Peng that the dragon has fled to the south. Gao Peng thinks back to what they saw earlier and realizes that the dragon will just go on a rampage in another city and absorb souls to heal from the damage they've done. He can only regret not taming the dragon's slaying chapter and Goddess Stone back when he had the time. If he had just done that, then the black dragon would have been nothing but a worm to him. Hey man, you know what they say about hindsight? It sucks. Regardless, their priority now is preventing the dragon from getting its jaw on another city. To that end, the group begin chasing after it, upsetting all manners of wildlife on the way. Well, mostly just these adorable squirrel things. They eventually catch up to the dragon and Dazi instantly hits it with a beam of lightning to stun it. While it's still stunned, Dummy weaves through the water tornadoes it's created and crashes into the dragon with a staggering kick. Only a second later, though, he's impaled by 3 of the dragon claws. Rather than showing any sign of worry, Dumby activates the next part of his plan. The dragon realizes what he's doing and calls him out for using himself as a medium to infuse his soul power into its body. By doing so, he can make it resonate with the rib spear he threw inside the dragon earlier and cause an implosion. The dragon angrily calls out that both Dumby and Frosty are insane. Unwilling to accept its impending defeat, all Dumby has to say is that the resonance is complete. It's time for the dragon to die. Right before he activates the finishing move, the black dragon gathers its energy for one final rage-filled attack. If it's going down, it refuses to do so alone. Once the energy for its attack is gathered, the black dragon fires it quickly. To Dumby's shock and subsequent panic though, the attack is headed not for the undead king but Gao Peng. I don't mean to be a backseat driver, but that's twice y'all have fallen for that now. As the blast closes in on Gao Peng, he realizes Flamey isn't fast enough to dodge it. This is the end for him. Or at least it would be if Dumby didn't have one last ace up his sleeve. Right before the blast hits, an absolutely enormous hand appears in its path and nullifies it. Dumby now stands in the center of a Titan-sized avatar under his control. Gao Peng is as shocked by this new skill as everyone else. The aura from it alone is absolutely terrifying on a whole new level. The black dragon senses this as well and tries to escape in the direction of human souls. Unfortunately for it, Dumby is sick and tired of the fiend. With one earth-shattering impact from his avatar's fist, the dragon's head is crushed and its life ended. Gao Peng barely has time to marvel at that before Dumby's energy runs out and he free falls towards the ground as his avatar dissipates. Gao Peng rushes to the location of Dumby's crash and worriedly asks if he's okay. Luckily, the big guy's mostly alright, just extremely exhausted. Relieved to see he'll live, Gao Peng praises Dumby for this new power. He asks if Dumby remembers what he just did, only to get a shake of the head in response. Deciding to shelf that for now, Gao Peng heads to the Black Dragon's corpse and asks Dumby if he can try to resurrect it. He hears their shot but tells Gao Peng that it's not possible since the beast is missing its head. Probably for the best. Screw that thing. Gao Peng tells him that's fine and contacts the Southern Sky employees closest to them so they can come collect the corpse at least. For now, it's time to go home. Back in the Southern Sky Group's experimental areas, Huang and Chun Sr. meet up where the Black Dragon's corpse is being harvested. Gao Peng has ordered for the organs, marrow, and spine to be kept while everything else can be distributed. Huang also informs Chun that Gao Peng finally managed to sign a contract with the Dragon's Slaying Chapter. The second he mentioned he killed the evil Black Dragon, it practically jumped him. They can only wish it happened sooner so Wu Gorge City could have been saved. Meanwhile, Gao Peng is on a video call with the mayor about that exact topic. Thanks to news of Wu Gorge City's utter annihilation with not a single civilian making it out, the world is panicking. Great Britain, Jiangnan City, Jinling City, and Wudu City have all pulled out of the World Alliance to declare independence and form their own alliances. The Allied world government is losing authority and power fast, causing the mayor to fear that the world will soon descend into the post-cataclysm chaos once more. Sheesh. Talk about bringing the mood down. With the call concluded, Gao Peng is left to stew over his own thoughts about the impending chaos. Just then, a group of archaeology experts are escorted to Gao Peng as per his request at an earlier date. When they demand to see the literature he supposedly has, Gao Peng tells him they're mistaken. He doesn't have any ancient language scripts or anything, but he does have two people from an ancient tribe who have served as valuable research subjects. See those drop jaws? That's how people react when they see sorry. Never mind. This is supposed to be a family-friendly channel. Later, Gao Peng is studying the video footage he has on all the King tier monsters that have emerged recently and caused chaos. Each of them have one thing in common: trainers that can't be recognized by modern systems. The four new trainers that have appeared overnight with King tier familiars are all but certain to be the ancient trainers who have returned. Between the widespread panic they're causing and their sheer power, it's highly concerning to think where things are going to go from here. Just then, Huang pops up on his screen and tells Gao that his grandpa's back, and he's brought some guests with him. Gao Peng rushes outside to meet Ji and spots a bunch of familiars following behind his white dragon. He wonders if these are the so-called guests. Up on top of said familiars, a couple of men in ancient clothing observe the land below them and refer to it as their ancestral land. One of them is talking about how the locals aren't very impressive and won't be able to catch up to their level when he suddenly spots something to the side that makes him crap himself. Stripey, in all his titanic glory, towers over them even up in the sky. Old man G just laughs good-naturedly at the reaction and offhandedly mentions that this is his grandson's cute and obedient familiar, Stripey. As soon as Ji and the others land, Gao Peng greets him with his familiars behind him. As the two catch up, the ancients that came with Ji mutter amongst themselves about how unfair it is that they can have multiple familiars. Meanwhile, they can only have a contract with one familiar at a time, and it can't even be changed until the familiar dies. The only one not stuck in self-pity is the guy who noticed Stripey before. He's of the mind that their ancestors wanted them to return here, so they have learned to tame multiple familiars too. Over with the locals, Ji tells Gao about the ancient tribe and says they've been acting like psychopaths, following him around as if he's the master of a pack of dogs. Kinda harsh, but yeah, they seem like it. Gao Peng tells his grandpa about how he already met other ancients and currently has two of them in captivity, while their language is deciphered by some experts. Ji tells Gao Peng that he'll help deal with any other messes, so he should just focus on learning their language for now. Gao Peng goes on to tell Ji that he plans to head to the Black Fog world once he's learned the ancients' language. Since they have a tendency to send their youngest and strongest to try to conquer Earth, he has to be at his best. And the level limit placed on Earth for their own protection is something that's severely holding him back from growing as much as he needs to. In the Fog world, he can bypass that and become as powerful as possible. Right now, his goal is to dominate the whole Black Fog world. Ji can only chuckle with joy and pride at his grandson's passion. He tells Gao Peng to go explore to his heart's content. The old man will handle everything back here so he can be at ease. Right after he says this, Flamey suddenly comes barreling towards them from the sky and calls out to Gao Peng in distress. Dazi is missing. Confused and worried in equal parts, Gao Peng asks what the heck happened and how he could have disappeared just like that. Flamey tells him that while he was out training in the woods, he entered a spatial rift and that rift suddenly disappeared today. Grandpa G knows how worried Gao Peng must be, so he tells his grandson to go handle this matter and he'll take care of their ancient guests. Not too long after that, Flamey brings Gao Peng to the site of Dazi's disappearance. He studies the area here and finds traces of electric powers all over the place. More notable are the traces of the space element Frosty Consents. According to him, there was a very unstable spatial rift in this spot. Gao Peng has an idea and tries to call out to Dazi through their blood contract, only to receive no response. Flamey is racked with guilt and apologizes for not keeping a closer watch on Dazi, but Gao Peng assures him it's not his fault. Besides, he may not be able to reach him right now, but he can sense that Dazi is safe and healthy wherever he may be. For now, they should head to the Black Fog world as Plam and see if they can find him there. A few weeks later, the group are in the Black Fog world. Gao Peng has made a staggering 27 attempts to contact Dazi, only to receive no reply every single time. Luckily, the blood contract aura still hasn't changed, so he is safe at least. For now, Gao Peng decides to focus on Dumby's promotion so they can be strong enough to search for Dazi in other worlds as well. Once Gao Peng gives him the go-ahead, Dumby begins his breakthrough to the next tier. The outpouring of power from this instantly attracts a level 64 Black Flame Rock Python to their location. As the beast closes in on their location, Dumby completes his breakthrough to the Emperor tier and attacks the Python with a new skill. Bone Prison, White Lotus. With this, the Python is ensnared in a cocoon of peels and then crushed into a mangled mess of bones and flesh. As he absorbs the energy from the corpse, Dumby rises to level 61. Goldie instantly asks his big brother to teach him that new move while Flamey calls him out on his fake politeness and the duck shoots back. They really do fight like a family. Pretty wholesome. Over on Gao Peng's shoulder, Frosty asks the trainer which direction they should go next. Gao Peng thinks about it and lists their options. The north has an Emperor tier monster they can't beat yet, and the east has an ocean they can't fight efficiently on right now. That leaves the south as their most viable option. After having Silly put away the snake corpse, they head on down. Towards the south, the group find a new labyrinth with a small hole in the door. Without even thinking of any possible consequences, Goldie goes straight to fiddling with the hole and pushes the door open. He's really not doing much to go against the whole blondes are dumb stereotype as he. On the other side of the door, Gao Peng is surprised to find cauldrons and firewood as well as a corpse. It's pretty strange to see that the monsters here had a sort of civilization of their own. Something about this place feels strangely off to him though. As the group walk further into the labyrinth, Gao Peng notes that it has the same restriction against flying abilities as all the others. Right as he's wondering if the same person or group of people built all of them, a horde of monsters comes crashing their way. In front of them stand dozens upon dozens of level 38 red-skinned sanguine pig demons. I'm just gonna call them rage pigs. The one thing Gao Peng takes note of in their system window is a mention of some kind of labyrinth god. While he thinks about that, Dumby easily takes down the majority of the Foot Soldier piggies with his soul steel power. The higher level pigs try to run away, only for their king to show up and take them out himself in anger. This one is much larger than the others and a level 54 monster. Slightly impressive, but still child's play for Dumby, as the mini-monster trio cheers him on. Dumby makes short work of the Pig King in a single move, while he stands in place to absorb the power of all his prey. Gao Peng tells him they'll head straight to the center and see if there's any treasure once he's done. Sure enough, there's definitely something at the center of the labyrinth. As far as Gao can tell, it's a bronze altar of some sort, but there's nothing on it. When he tries to touch it, a flame bursts to life and burns away the tips of his gloves, making Gao Peng think it's a trap. As such, he orders Dumby to smash the thing. Right as he says this, a little imp of some kind emerges from the altar and begs them not to break in while promising power. Dumby's already halfway through the movement though and ends up punching the altar regardless. To both his and Gao Peng's shock though, there's not so much as a scratch on the altar. Even if Dumby was holding back, that's pretty impressive. Sure enough, the system window tells Gao Peng that this is the Abyss Plundering Altar. When something is placed on it, the altar disassembles it and returns the contents to the offerer in a usable form. The imp that can now be identified as the avatar of the altar itself lies on top of it with a smug smile. It tells Gao Peng that it accepts him as its new master and promises to serve him well. Gao Peng decides to test something out and plops a wooden stick from the ground onto the altar. Sure enough, the flame bursts to life and transforms the stick into a rough wooden crystal with the nutrients normally found in wood. Gao Peng begins to understand that this is most likely a food processing instrument. With this, he never has to worry about starving in the wild again. Turning to Silly, he has the little guide bring out the corpse of the python they killed earlier and plops it onto the altar. Sure enough, the altar works on this too, transforming the corpse into 3 pills. One that acts as a food pill, one that grants level 2 earth resistance, and one that grants level 2 fire resistance permanently. Gao Peng is blown away by the usefulness of this altar. Eating pills from it may remove the ability to upgrade resistances in other ways, but the pills themselves can be stacked. As he advances on the altar with a greedy look, the imp tells him that he's in a damaged state right now. When he eventually regains his former glory, the extraction ability will be even more effective and impressive. If his mind wasn't made up before, it definitely is now. Gao Peng has Dumby carry the altar on the Strepi's back where he sets it down for the foreseeable future. While he's speaking to the altar imp, Frosty suddenly informs Gao Peng that there are monsters fighting for ownership of a nearby labyrinth right now. After approaching the labyrinth that Frosty pointed out, the group watches what's happening from atop a nearby cliff. A whole horde of level 67 dragon ants are marching on the labyrinth doors. From his system window, Gao Peng learns that they're kind of like blood thieves in that they steal dragon blood to jumpstart their own transformation. Suddenly, the door of the labyrinth swings open and the monster that lives within emerges. A level 69 6-armed giant. Heh, nice. Between its insane level and the powers listed in the system window, Gao Peng is blown away by the strength of this beast. The dragon ants are little more than lambs to the slaughter as the giant crushes them one after the other with ease. As the massacre goes on, Slicey is examining the giant very closely and can clearly see every single weak point on its body. Despite this, he knows that his blades aren't strong enough yet to truly shred through those points. This is something that greatly bothers him. Meanwhile, the giant is going absolutely sicko mode on the battlefield. It impales, crushes, stabs, stomps, rips apart, and altogether annihilates every dragon ant in its sight. Gao Peng can't believe how massive the difference in strength between the two sides is despite there only being a 2-level jump. That's when Slicey suddenly dashes past him, off their cliff and onto the battlefield like a monster possessed. He yells about how they'll be completely useless if he doesn't go out and do something. Even if he can't win, he has to at least make this one cut, and sure enough, the cut he's talking about is right at the giant's Achilles tendon, causing it to collapse onto the ground while Slicey speeds past it and back to his safe distance. Unfortunately, he starts gloating a little early and nearly gets caught by a projectile from the giant. Though he's able to dodge it, Gao Peng sees that the danger is rising and sends Dumby out to go help Slicey escape. The undead emperor rushes onto the battlefield and pulls the arm of a dead monster out of the ground before spinning around and slamming it into the 6-armed giant. After doing that again, he fires a shot from his bow at the beast, followed up by a cut, a juke, and a dash to safety. Now that they're out of its range, the giant decides to retreat inside the labyrinth to lick its wounds. Gao Peng tells Dumby to let it go and not follow. After all, the labyrinth is its personal territory and they don't know what kind of traps it may have set up in there. For now, they'll wait until Dumby's level is higher before going in. Putting that aside, Gao Peng also scolds Slicey for his impulsive actions, causing the little guy to meekly apologize. There is one good thing to come out of this whole thing though. Thanks to the giant being forced to retreat, all the dragon ant corpses have been left out here for them to collect for themselves. Since Dumby's resurrection ability won't work on monsters of a higher level than his own, Gao Peng decides to have Goldie absorb the monster cores to boost his strength and prepare for his next evolution. Everything else can just be fed straight into the altar for maximum benefit. A win-win for everyone. Well, everyone except the altar. Poor thing's so overfed it might explode. While Gao Peng is having fun with his brand spanking new Hack's altar, life goes on back home in Yuzhou City. While observing the work done by the Southern Sky Group, the White Dragon tribe's Yin has a disgruntled attitude about him, hugging him from behind. Another tribe member asks him if Chi Hunwu is truly the High Priest. Based on the portrait of the High Priest in their temple back home, there's virtually no doubt about it. Yin is upset by this though. He claims that even if he is the reincarnation of their priest, his familiar is just an ordinary white dragon, which is the lowest grade among the white dragon's bloodline. Not to mention it's only a king tier. In this world where might makes right, how is such a person possibly to be of help to him? Somebody's a little full of themselves today, aren't they? Suddenly, another member of the tribe comes running up to them and tells Yin that members of the Inferno tribe have entered the city. Yin offers some good old exposition for all you folks at home and explains that the Inferno tribe is ranked second of the 7 major tribes, right under their own White Dragon tribe. You can only assume that they're here for him. Even though he isn't exactly the tribe head's favorite, Yin is still his son after all. Still confused, Yin tells the messenger to inform the others so they can go meet the Inferno tribe members face to face. When they arrive at the spot where the other tribe's members are, Yin recognizes the leader as young Master Yi Zhou. He demands to know what they're doing here, to which Yi Zhou assures him he's not here for the White Dragon heir. He's just come to find the champion of the ancestral land, Ji Hunwu, and gauge his power level. Yin simply demands to know what he's thinking by openly challenging before the White Dragon tribe when he knows what his familiar is. Rather than trying to fight Yin on this, Yi Zhou seems to have some kind of realization and backs off at once. He just sheepishly apologizes for intruding and says goodbye, greatly irking Yin with his attitude. That was way more chill than I expected that interaction to be. Fun dude. Back in the fog world, Gao Peng is now in possession of several pills from the processing of all the dragon ants. A flesh essence pill, a soul essence pill, a gigantificated body pill, a wind element master pill, and a thin blood of the dragon of destruction pill. The first one he takes real note of is the gigantification pill. According to the system window, this pill increases the user's body size by 8 times. Upon doing the math real quick, Gao Peng realizes this should roughly double the total length, width, and height of any of his monsters. Naturally, he decides to offer this to the one monster in his little family that desires a height boost more than anything else. He barely manages to even explain what the pill does though, let alone offer it to him, because the second Slicey hears about it, he steals it out of Gao Peng's hand and chows down. A few moments later, Slicey is overjoyed to find that he's grown way taller than before, only for Goldie to instantly dampen his mood by stepping up and saying he's still pretty small in general though. While they fight, Gao Peng realizes Slicey's original size was so small that it's only natural. Next up is the Wind Mastery Pill. This one he hands straight away to Silly since he's the only wind using familiar he's got. Picky as ever though, the floating jellyfish pulls out a juicer from his pocket dimension, blends up the pill into a smoothie and dumps it into a sippy cup before drinking it. Moments later, he's capable of producing massive gusts of wind, which he uses to mess up Gao Peng's hair. Yeah, totally valid use. Not a waste at all. After thoroughly yelling at Silly and taking the time to calm his hair back into perfection, Gao Peng wonders what to do with the thin blood of the Dragon of Destruction pill. The Altar Imp actually advises against using it on any of his familiars since it's a thin bloodline, which is a gamble to use. Not to mention possible clashes with other bloodlines that it's incompatible with in the future. Gao Peng decides he's right and stows away the pill for future use. With all that taken care of, it's time to put the treasure-sniffing rodent to work once more. There's plenty more dragon ants to find and mess up after all. As soon as the mouse picks up the trail of the dragon ants, Stripey marches on in their direction. Eventually, they make their way to a forested area with some mountains in the middle. Based on the behavior of the animals outside the mountains, Gao Peng's pretty sure the ants are all still inside it. And so, he asks Stripey to do what he does best. Smash the whole damn place and kill everything in sight. The end. For now.